welcome to another episode of Uncommon Edge.
I have literally never had another job. It was the biggest mistake I ever made. I've made some really dumb decisions. I had become addicted to gambling. People need to understand the addiction of gambling is as bad as being addicted to crack. I'm so glad it happened.
Yeah.
Because it made me who I am right now. We started growing a really good antique auction company. I'm the boss. Y'all work for me.
Where the real magic happens is when you duplicate yourself in other people, and now all of a sudden you have 2, 3, 4, 5 people.
I could do it for maybe 2 weeks, maybe a month, but I couldn't do it for a year. I see myself working forever. I love working.
Welcome to an episode of Uncommon Edge. Uncommon Edge! And I have my guest today, Andy Dunning. Thank you, brother, for coming in today.
Man, absolutely. Pleasure to be asked to be on this. It's an honor to be able to sit here with you.
Absolutely. Well, this has been in the works,
Yes.
For, the in and out. Like, dude, next time you come into town, we got to sit down and talk.
Yeah,
So
definitely.
here we are. Well, let's just unpack it all today.
Sounds good to me. I'm wide open.
We'll unpack it all, and again, what I'm trying to get out of this is this edge that everybody has, right? And we were just talking about it before we went live. It's like, everybody has that edge. It's like, what is that secret sauce? And again, I think why you and I have kind of connected is we're in that age group now to where, we're running around with some younger guys, and
Yes.
but we're also getting older, and it's kind of like this. It's a weird time for me right now. It's a weird time in my life.
I hit the big speed limit sign this year, so
Yeah.
I'm 3 months away and I'll be 55, and I'm sitting there going, man, I remember when I used to just sit and think about that age, even when I was in my 20s, and I would think of somebody that was 55, and I'm like, God, they're old.
Yeah.
I'm like, hey, Methuselah.
Right. I mean, I remember when, when you're young, you really don't know your grandparents, like the ages. They're your grandma and grandpa, right?
Yeah.
And I remember my grandpa turned 54, and I was like, 54?
Yep.
Like, what?
Yep.
So anyway, we'll go down that. We'll go down the old man
That's
alley
it.
here in a little bit. But I want you to unpack, like, tell me how you got started in business. Like, where did all that come from, and just unpack it.
I think I come from my dad was I think a serial entrepreneur, and he's a retired colonel from the Army. And, with being a retired colonel from the Army, we traveled our entire lives. I mean, I went to, I think we counted it up. It was like 12 or 13 different schools by the time I was in the 8th grade.
No kidding.
Yeah. So we were moving every 6 months to a year. So what it did for me, though, is it made it easy for me to meet people.
Right.
It was just like I had no option. So you kind of became like a chameleon. Everywhere you went, you were around different people. So you were always having to change, always having to, reinvent yourself for a new crowd. So that was always good for me, but it wasn't so good on my brother. He didn't filter in that same way, different personality, but I think that entrepreneur side just came from my dad. He always, while he was in the military, he always had a side hustle, doing something. He'd start a business, he'd sell it, he'd start a business, he'd sell it, he'd fail, he'd go through and be like, well, that one didn't work, and then I got in, I was in college, I was playing basketball in college, and I blew my knee out, and I went home. The only reason why I went to college was to play basketball. And I wasn't even really thrilled about that. I got a full ride scholarship, and I was just like, it's not what I want to do, because I didn't want to go to school. And, when I blew my knee out, I really just didn't have that desire to go, okay, I want to get back in shape. I want to go through all the pain to get back to where I'm.
Yeah, so I can go to school.
So I can go to school,
Right.
and that's all it was. And so I asked my dad. He was selling antiques at the time at an antique show in downtown Dallas.
Was he retired?
He was retired at this point.
When you were
yes.
okay.
Yeah, this is this is probably in 1990, and we're in Fair Park, and I was sitting with my dad. I said, man, I want to do something with you in the antique business. And he goes, okay, great. He says, let's open an antique auction house. And I'm like, I just completely threw me to the side. I'm like, who are you going to get to be your auctioneer? Yeah. He goes, you. And I'm like, Dad, I think I'd been to 2 auctions ever in my life. As like a little kid, we went, to a junk sale or something like that to buy some household items or something. And he's like, no, you can do it. And I'm like, so I found it was a trade magazine called The Antique Trader. And in the back of it, it had an auction school, Missouri Auction School, which was one of the oldest auction schools there were. But I didn't know anything about it. So I send off for a deal, and they send you some tapes and some stuff to listen to and everything. And I left a couple of weeks later, went to auction school, and I have literally never had another job since. I've done this.
So you can do the ribbon like the.
I used to be really good at it. I quit doing it about 7 or 8 years ago. But I went from being, not knowing anything about the auction business to we started growing a really good antique auction company. I mean, we built a very prominent one in Dallas. Then my dad, what he always did, being the entrepreneur he was, guess what? He sold it. And me and my brother are kind of like, what are we going to do? But when I went to auction school, I went to my very first car auction. And when I went to that car auction, I sat there, I said, that's what I want to do. I want to be that guy. And so the whole time I've been in the auction business, I was working my way towards that. And then when my dad sold the company, it kind of opened up that avenue for me to go, okay, I'm going to become a car auctioneer. In 1997, I've been in the auction business for about 6 years. And I went to compete they have contests for auctioneers. And I went to compete in one of the contests, and this is a state championship, and I won the Texas State Championship when I was 26.
Oh, that's awesome.
And then right after that, though, is the.
Now hold on. Was this kind of like a little bit of a rock star persona when you're in that?
Yeah, I mean, because you're behind a microphone and you're the guy. You're the guy, and I mean, and you're in control. And for me, it was a psychological thing because I'm sitting up there and I'm the puppet master.
Correct.
I'm controlling the crowd, and you're sitting there bidding on something and. My whole job is to convince you to continue to spend more money or to know when you're done spending money. So I'm always having to read people constantly.
Reading the room.
Yes. And it taught me so much about conversations, how to sit and talk with people, how to get people to, if you want to call it manipulate or however.
The art of persuasion.
Yes. Yeah. Into whatever it was that I was needing done at that time.
So, and again, like when I'm doing a training with a group of people, it's like I'm looking for reactions.
Yeah.
Like are they on their phone? Are they taking notes? Are they really locked in on me? How does that work with a large crowd and you are kind of like keeping your eye on everything? Like how does that? So what do you look for in a large crowd?
I knew my buyers. Okay, so we were dealing at the car auction. We were always dealing with professional buyers. I knew what kind of cars they bought. I knew what they were looking for. So whenever I would see, I would be auctioning and selling the car in front of me, but I'm looking 2 or 3 cars back to see what's coming up next. And I'm sitting there thinking in my mind, okay, where's Dan at? Because Dan's going to be the buyer for this car coming up. Okay, there he is. Okay, back to doing this. And I always prided myself. They say you can't truly multitask. Your brain can only do one thing. I don't believe that because when I'm auctioning, I'm doing 10 things at one time. I'm thinking about selling the car in front of me. I'm thinking about, is that guy about to get hit by the car coming in? Is because people just walk in front of the car. So my mind is running so many different things while I'm up there doing that. Wow. Not just the fact of counting, Wow. So it was that's why I always found it so much fun. There's just so much going on with it. So, but in 97, then I went and competed in the international championship. And this is a group for the best auctioneers in the world. And the first year I competed in it, I won. So
Stop.
I'm the only one to win. Yeah, I'm the only one to win it the first time out that they ever competed in it, and I'm the youngest one still to ever win it. And,
dude, that's really cool.
Yeah, it was fun. It was something neat, but I was too young when I won it because I didn't know what I won.
Gotcha.
So I did not know how to take, hey man, you just had this great event just happen. How do I take this now, market myself, and then move myself
go to the next level.
And so I just kind of won it, and I was like, okay, good deal, high five, see y'all later.
Right.
And I disappeared for 10 years. I kept doing what I was doing within my business instead of going out and growing with the business. And it was a total different.
Now, where was your dad in all this? Was he on the sidelines watching, or was he participating in any way?
He was on the sidelines watching up until a point. When I got when I got truly into the auto auction space, I bought my first auto auction. It was one of those deals, and I think this came from my dad being the entrepreneur. I didn't want to work for somebody else ever. And I was working as a contract labor selling other people's auctions. And I was like, no, we need to have our own. So then I had an opportunity to buy our first one. And once I got it bought, then my dad came back on board. He started helping manage it, make sure everything. My dad, I had a great, this kind of a little off subject, but I had a great team when it came to running a company. My dad always managed my money. My brother always managed the people. And I always managed to be out in front and take care of the sales.
Wow.
So I had this
perfect trifecta.
It was one of those deals. I used to tell people, I said, it was so easy to get a customer to come run cars with us.
Yeah.
Because if I came into your office and I'm like, hey man, I want you to start doing a little business with us at the auction. I think that we can do this for you. And you're like, you know what? But when my car goes through the lane and your auctioneer says sold, I want to see a squirrel do backflips across the lane. Okay, yeah, I think I can make that happen. Don't worry about that. And then I'd call my brother up and I'd be like, hey, we need a squirrel to do backflips. He's like, I don't know how we're going to do that. Next thing you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It didn't literally happen that way, but I could always depend on him. Whatever I needed done, he made it happen.
See, and that's the thing. People, what I see sometimes, and I'm just as guilty, it's like the entrepreneur spirit, you're kind of like a lone wolf mentality.
Yeah.
Okay. But where the real magic happens is when you duplicate yourself and other people, and now all of a sudden you have 2, 3, 4, 5 people all thinking the same, all moving in the same direction. And I think that right there is where the younger guys that are out there thinking, oh, it's I'm going to be the guy. You can't do it alone.
No.
You have to have the right people, whether it's family, and that's unique, having dad, brother, family business, because you all hear, the horror stories of family businesses.
But they are horror stories for a reason, right? Because we had them. I mean, just because we had a great dynamic didn't mean we didn't have some epic throwdowns. I mean, we had such an epic throwdown, I sold the company. And I didn't want to sell the company, and we got in an epic throwdown, and it's just one of those things. I was just like,
was it almost like you guys went back to being teenagers or something, and you're arguing with your dad at that point?
Yes.
Was it
because my brother and I were on the same side? My brother was going to do the whatever it was I was going to do. My dad wanted to retire again. So he's like, and the way we had structured our company, I owned 60%, my dad owned 20, and my brother owned 20, but our voting rights were a third apiece. So, and we're sitting here, my dad's like, hey, I want to retire. Man, I had to buy him out. Well, I didn't have the money at the time to buy him out. And when it came to the voting, my brother was on his side. He's like, yeah, I think I want to, step off to the side too. And I'm like, oh man, you guys are killing me. I finally convinced my brother, hey, stay on. We're going, we had a great offer on the table. And I'm like, I don't want to do it. I'm not ready to sell yet. And this is literally like the day before we're supposed to close. And we're coming in to tell my dad we're not closing. We're done. We'll figure out how to buy you out. We're not selling. And we get in a fight, the three of us. And I just threw my hands up and I was like, sell it.
Wow.
And it was the biggest mistake I ever made.
Yeah, I was about to say that we all go through stuff and regrets on people and businesses and stuff like that. where, if you had to go back in time, what would you have done differently?
Don't sell on emotion.
Would you have paused?
Oh,
would you have paused and said, "Do you know what, guys? I'm going to take a week.
Yeah.
I'll get back to you."
Yeah. And so what I ended up doing is I got frustrated. I should have taken that step back, because then later on I didn't have a mentor.
Because you're how old at this point?
38.
Okay. So
Yeah.
you're just like in that, hey, I know what I'm doing,
Yeah.
but the maturity, the wisdom isn't there.
Well, and I was as arrogant as it gets. And, and I would, like I said, I'm the boss,
Right.
y'all work for me.
Yeah.
And even though it's a family business, I should have stopped. I should have taken that moment. But see, I didn't have a mentor at that time. And had I had a mentor, I would have had somebody to kick that back on. My dad was a great role model for me. My dad was never a mentor. So there was a difference. Everybody's like, well, your dad should have been your mentor growing up through business. No, that's not the way it is. My dad was my role model for what I was doing, but my dad was not the one that was sitting there when I needed advice on what to do within a company. Now, where I'm at now, my dad is kind of a mentor now, because I go back to him now on stuff and I'm like, hey man, we're fixing to do this. What do you think on it? They're like, well, I don't know. Yeah, this is something we should do. I think this fits into what you're doing. And now there's a different conversation. But when you're partners, there is no mentorship.
Yeah.
So if I'd had go back to that, if I'd had that mentor, I could have had that conversation, put it on pause, not sold, and we figure out what we're going to do from there.
Isn't it amazing? Like when you look back, and I go back, as of lately, I've been doing a lot of reflecting and stuff. And it's like, God, I look back at those pivotal moments and it's like, oh my God, you big moron. Why didn't you just pause? Why didn't you just say, pump the brakes, time out, and take a 24, 72-hour time out? Like, people don't realize how important that is sometimes, especially when you get heated. Like, like you said, when emotion starts taking over, all bets are off. It's like,
and it's amazing what that breath can do for you.
Yep.
Because all it does is it just gets you thinking back clearly again.
Yeah.
And yes, I can go back and say, man, I wish I had done this. I wish I had done that. It's one of those things. I'm so glad it happened.
Yeah.
Because it made me who I am right now. Now I've built a company that's even bigger than the one I had. Would I have been able to do that?
Probably
I don't
not.
know. I don't know that I could have, because I don't know that I would have learned the lessons I needed to learn by not, by not doing that.
Okay, so now that you're on this other, you sold.
Yep.
And then did you lay low for a minute, or were you like, oh, I'm itching to?
So I was still 38 when I sold. I sold, 8-figure business. And when you're 38 and you get that kind of money, first thing you think is you're bulletproof, especially when you've never had that kind of money before. I was always making good money, but I didn't ever put it away because it lasts forever.
I'll be able to do this forever.
This lasts forever. Once you have it, it never goes away.
Right.
And so we sold. I started to kind of lose my identity because I really didn't have what I was doing anymore. I wasn't auctioning. I wasn't running the company anymore. So I went to my number 2 go. And that was gambling. And when I went gambling,
that always turns out.
Oh, great. Gambling is. I advise everybody, if you sell your company, first thing you do is go gamble.
Oh boy.
So then I didn't party when I was younger. But when I got into my 30s, I was like, oh, yeah, here we go. So now I started drinking. Yes, started drinking because I had money. I could go do whatever we wanted to do. And then so going through that, I've made some really dumb decisions. And getting in gambling was one of them. But I'd gambled probably since I was 18.
Yeah.
It's even though it wasn't legal, I had places we could go.
Sure.
I could get in and play. And then my dad's a professional gambler. And, so it just kind of, it fit.
One thing led to another.
And I was really good at it, except I drank. And then when I'd go past that point, then it would get bad, and we'd go on trips and, when I first started gambling, I used to tell everybody, man, I'd go sit at a blackjack table and, they had the $2 tables. I'd play at that $2 table, like, yeah, here we go, and then I'd be at $5 and then I'd be at $10. I'm like, man, we're killing it, guys, and then we'd leave and I'd be up, $500 or $600. I'm like, man, we had a great day at gambling, Well, then that moved to where that $25 turned into 50. The 50 turns into 100. 100 turns into 500. Well, when I quit gambling, I was probably, my average hand was somewhere between 50 and 75,000 a hand. Oof. And I'd have trips where, I'd win a couple $1 million. I'd have trips where I lost a couple $1 million. And to come home from that feeling is pretty demoralizing. You're like, oh, how are we going to do this? But I have a great company.
You're justifying. Yep.
Write that check out of there. Take care of that. Always got money. Then we sold.
You're like a functioning gambler that had the means to be able to do it. However, you justified I can do this because I can.
Yeah. Well, and because I knew I had something to back it up.
Right.
I wasn't going outside of my means.
Right. It's not like you mortgaged the house to place a bet type
exactly,
stuff, which that's what you hear a lot of times, from people, going down that road.
Well, but you fast forward 8 years from the time I sold, that's where I was. I had become addicted to gambling. And I wasn't just gambling, I was gambling on what time the sun comes up. Didn't matter that it was printed in the paper. Right. I was still going to bet you that you were wrong, Wow. And so then I'd sit there. I was betting on games. I'm playing blackjack, and I'm playing large amounts of blackjack. And I'd play at 2 casinos. I'd play at the Hard Rock, and I'd play at Mandalay Bay. And those were the only 2 casinos I'd typically ever set foot in. The rest, I would, we'd stop at a casino, we'd have some fun or something like that. But I got to where the games were losing so much. I was going to play blackjack, which I was extremely good at. I was going to cover it with blackjack. Here I'm down over here, from these games. I got to pay a bookie now. Yeah. And I'm flying to Vegas to go win some money to come back and pay my bookie. And it just started a cycle of hell. And man, it took me down a hole that I think I would play blackjack. There was no I won a little bit or I broke even. I was either dead broke or I broke the casino. Ooh. There was only no middle ground. And I had that ability to get up and leave. Right. And I couldn't. I'd just sit there. I would be like, okay, well, we're losing. I know I'm going to continue to lose. I'm going to continue to lose. I know I'm in a losing run, and there's no recovery from it. And I would just have to bury myself. I needed to feel that loss. I think I was addicted to chasing that loss instead of chasing the win. Right. I was stuck on how bad can I destroy myself to then build myself back up. And business is no different. There was a point in time in my life in business that I could be, you and I could be business partners in something, and we're going along and things are going great, and we have a bad discussion, and I'd be like, well, I'm going to just burn this damn thing down. And be done with this. Where do you think you got that from? Like, what is there something that you can go back and go, oh yeah, there it is? No, I think it was I don't know. I think I'm sadistic or something. I felt like I always felt like I could recover from anything.
Got it.
you know, but at the same time, I always felt like if things were going too good, I might not have deserved what I was getting. So let me tear myself back down to be back to that side of where I felt like I was chasing that loss.
Okay.
I mean,
I know that feeling.
it's crazy. And there's a lot of people in business that they build these huge successful companies and they're like, man, I got to burn this thing down, you know, and they do it.
And start over because
Yeah.
that's what feeds their soul.
Yes. And
See, and this is where, again, like you said, having the right mentor, because obviously if you had the right mentor or inner circle at that time, they would have been like, hey, Andy, what are you doing?
yep. Instead, I had people around me
That were all yes men.
fueled.
Yep.
Oh, the gambling was fueled by other addicts. People need to understand gambling, the addiction of gambling is as bad as being addicted to crack. The dopamine or whatever it is that's going on in your head, it's the same.
Yep.
And I've got friends that are, you know, at point in time, they were a crackhead. And I've had that conversation with them. I said, did you know, I had this thing that I was chasing something and I couldn't get rid of it. And I still to this day, I'm worried, man, if I walk into a casino, do I want to play? Yeah, but that feeling's still there. You know, I'm like, I could sit down for a little bit. You know, so I always
the little devil and the angel on your shoulder,
so I always
whispering.
I always tell people, you know, let's go to Vegas. I've been to Vegas since January of 2018. I've been out there twice now for business trips that I had to be on.
How was that first go around? The first time.
Very nervous. I was nervous. I was very anxious. I was very. Jamie was with me, my girlfriend, and when we were there, you know, she almost was like, okay, I'm going everywhere you're going. If you're going to the bathroom, I'm going to the bathroom with you.
Yeah, there might be a slot machine in there.
That's exactly it. You know, and so she was right there with me because she went through this whole thing. She never really knew the extent to how deep I got, and that conversation will probably be for another day.
Sure.
But you know, I kept that away from her. You know, but it had gotten so bad. I mean, I was in trouble. You know, I'd gone through. I'd burned my lines of credit. I had lines of credit at both those casinos for millions of dollars. You know, and I got in the hole. And what people don't realize about lines of credit at casinos can't just go, oh, hey, I'm going to file bankruptcy and it goes away. State of Nevada, doesn't matter what state you live in,
No kidding.
they can come arrest you.
What?
Yeah. And so I had a judgment put against me on what I'd lost. But I paid it all back. I made a deal with the DA and a deal with the casino to let me
Make 'em whole.
to make them whole. And I paid off the first casino. I got them paid off immediately, and then the second casino was a struggle. But you know,
Yeah.
But that's what led me to get back into business. Yep. And I was sitting there, and I was like, I got to be able to figure out how am I going to pay these people off? I don't have a job. You know, so now what am I going to do? I'm going to go back into business. So I opened up an auto auction again, and I built it up and paid back the casino. I paid them back in like 2 years, and got back on my feet and been bigger than ever since.
And the rest is history.
Yeah, no, and like I said, don't go to Vegas. You know, I've been twice, but I don't have the desire to go out there. You know, people are like, oh, hey, we're going to Vegas. I'm like, man, I don't drink anymore. You know, I'm 2 years sober, and I've had a couple glasses of wine, but not drinking. And you know, so I got completely away from that. But I found the right people now to surround myself with versus that group of friends that I had.
Saying it's okay.
Yeah, you know, hey, go do this. It's all good.
Because I remember when I first got sober, and it had probably been 3, 4, 5 years, and then there was some function or something in Vegas, and I was like, oh my God, this is like the devil's whispering in your ear
Yep.
the whole time. And it was like I didn't like it. It's a very awkward feeling. But then the next time I went back, I'm like, okay, now I know what to expect. Because again, with any type of addiction, whether it's gambling, drugs, alcohol, it's there.
And I've already got an addictive personality to start with.
Correct.
You know?
I mean, I'm over here getting ripped on Red Bull and caffeine, and it's like, but for guys like us, we have to find that balance factor.
Yep. And that's really hard to do when it becomes your personality. It became my persona. Everybody's like, oh, Andy, man, he's, you walked into my office, there was a whole closet of nothing but empty magnums of Grey Goose. Everybody'd be like, good Lord.
You're a Grey Goose guy?
Yeah.
So was I.
Yeah. I mean, and
there you go. That's why I like
that's
you.
That's right. And I was that person. I couldn't drink one drink. I had to drink the bottle.
Absolutely.
So if you opened a bottle, it needed to be finished. There was kind of a rule.
I never understood why someone would leave a half of a drink undrank.
Yeah. I mean,
that didn't make any sense.
No, it was like, we're leaving. I'd be like, okay, hold on. I'm ready now.
Right.
Where are the keys?
You going to finish yours?
Yeah, exactly. So it just, that drinking thing, it became, everybody thought that, oh, Andy's partier. He's going to be so much fun when we go out with him. And I realized when I quit that, I didn't have those friends anymore. And not only did I not have those friends anymore, I didn't even, when they did call to say, hey, let's do something, I went originally and did something with them. And I'm like, oh man, I was only friends with these people because I was a drinker and I needed other drinkers around me.
Yep.
And I didn't realize that until I quit.
Did you find there was this little moment in the timeline that you were like, shit, man, this is lonely?
Yeah,
especially coming, that's what I noticed personally.
Yeah,
so.
I mean, it's a very lonely move, especially, when that was your
outlet.
That was my outlet. I mean, and it was, whether things are good or things are bad, I was like, you know what, let's have a drink.
Right.
And I didn't drink daily, but I drank, when we'd go to dinner on Friday night, well, we were drinking.
Yeah.
Then on Saturday, we were drinking.
Yeah.
Then on Sunday, I probably wasn't getting up.
Maybe a Bloody Mary or something.
Yeah.
To take the edge off.
Yeah. Well, we would drink. Yeah. At some point in time, we'd start drinking on Sunday.
Yep.
And I found out it just wasn't any fun anymore. When I quit, I'm like, wow, now I have Saturdays. Now I just picked up 2 days out of the week extra to do stuff.
Now you got 7 days.
Yes. I'm like, man, I'm gaining time here. What was I thinking? And so I really, like I said, those friends that went to the wayside, I still have some friends that, and now I go out, they don't even offer me a drink. They know I set an expectation of what our relationship was going to be. And it was, when we went out, it was that first time, hey, Andy, do you want to drink? Nope, I'm not drinking anymore. Okay, cool. Next time we go out, hey, Andy, you want to drink? Nope, still not drinking. Okay. Then when they asked me that next time, I'm like, I told you I wasn't drinking anymore. And there's no need to ever ask me again if I need a drink.
Right.
If you do, we're probably not going to be having this conversation again, because you're not respecting what I need for where I'm at.
Yeah.
And so once I started setting that expectation, my friends really became my friends. They just sat there and they'd be like, hey, I'm having a drink.
Yeah.
I'm like, have at it, brother.
Yeah.
I'm all for it. I'll drive. And it just changed things. I was really happy with it, but that came from this journey that I've gotten on over the last 8 years. That the drinking's only been for the last 2 years, but I've been on I don't know, I call it a rebirth or whatever.
Sure.
Journey of changing who I was, whether it was, cold turkey and gambling, and getting out of that environment and that whole part of my life. Then finding out, trying to rebuild my company. And when I went to go back and rebuild my company, I didn't have my brother and I didn't have my dad. I was walking into this doing
all
it
by
on
yourself.
my own. And now I'm in a different field. And when I told you earlier, I hadn't auctioneered in 7 or 8 years. I haven't auctioned since I opened back the new company. Because see, when I owned the old company, I was always up there auctioneering.
Right. You were the guy.
And it was really cool because my brother was the other guy. My brother, so we had 2 lanes, cars coming through. My brother's selling one lane, I'm selling the other, and it's like, man, it's just the coolest thing in the world, you know. Everybody'd be like, oh, the Dunning brothers, you know. And but then when I restarted, my brother had retired. He's riding around on, he's got a 65-foot Power Cat that they cruise between the Bahamas and like the Northeast coast all year long, back and forth, you know, avoiding hurricanes.
Yeah.
And that's what they do. And they've done that for the past 7 years, him and his wife, and live on that boat year round. And I'm like, that's insane.
Wow. I don't know if I could do that.
I don't.
I mean, I'm all about having some downtime and having some fun, but that's like, you're just like all in.
I could do it for maybe 2 weeks, maybe a month, but I couldn't do it for a year.
Yeah, let's talk about that. It's kind of interesting. My wife and I, we had some older 401ks that were needing to convert over to an IRA, blah, 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 talking to our financial guy. Yeah. And we started dipping into like the numbers. Okay. Now this is crazy because he's like, well, so when do you want to start, you know, pulling your Social Security, you know, these conversations, which I've never been a part of.
Yeah.
Okay. So yeah. I don't know if you've gone down this road yet.
Not
okay.
Yet.
Like my wife and I were very like, oh my God. Like, you know, so at 70, you know, you could start pulling, or you can do early, all this stuff. Like you could start receiving Social Security at 62 or whatever. You don't get the full amount, but if you wait till 70, you know, blah, blah, blah. Yeah. It's not a ton of money, but we started like looking at one another going, at 70, I'm like, in 12 years, I'm going to be 70.
Yeah.
Okay. So what does retirement look like? What is retirement? See, I don't look at retirement as like when we were kids and we had uncles and aunts and grandparents that retired.
You got the gold watch and sent on your way.
Correct. And they went and bought a little condo in Florida or South Texas, whatever. So now my wife and I are going, ooh, now what?
Yeah.
So my question to you is what's the end goal? Like where's enough? Or are you always going to have your finger on the pulse, take a backseat approach? I'm just interested because we're in the same age group.
I think, so my dad's 84. He still works for me.
See?
I pick him up most days, or one of my other employees picks him up to bring him to work every day. And that's one of the coolest things I can say. If you ever have this opportunity, take it. I didn't appreciate it when I should have. The moments I get with my dad.
The moments.
Man, I mean, now it's like a car ride with my dad means a lot more now than it used to.
Yep.
Because I don't know how many more of those car rides I get.
I know.
You know?
I know.
And my dad's Rain Man. I mean, he is a numbers savant. It's just insane. And that's why he's a professional gambler. But his mind is just as sharp today as it was, 20 years ago. And it's unbelievable.
So do you see yourself?
That's where I was going with it, is I just don't know, because where I talk about where I got my entrepreneurship deal from, I think my dad has instilled in me retirement equals death.
Yeah.
And I know so many of my friends that were older, they were in their 60s, they sold their company, 2 years later, they're dead. And I'm like,
that scares me.
It scares me. So I said, now, okay, let's say in 7 to 10 years, I want to sell my company. I'm going to be 65 and I sell my company. I'm going to make sure that I already have another plan set up. What am I doing? Maybe I'm doing mentorship. Maybe I'm on a board of directors somewhere. Maybe I'm...
Or they keep you on staff for...
Whatever. Or I'm...
Janitorial duties.
That's right. Or I'm building another company. I'm just not running that company
Correct.
any longer. And, you know, and that's where the great thing, I guess, about being a serial entrepreneur is we have other businesses. So when I sell my main business the next time, I've got another business to go run. So I'll always have something. I don't ever feel that I want to go sit and do nothing. I don't want to be like my brother.
Yeah.
You know, my brother, he hasn't worked in 8 years.
Wow.
And I do, you know, and if he ever, and God bless him, he never has to.
Right.
You know, that him and his wife made their financial
Sure.
decisions and did really well. So they never have to worry about working again. But I never had that luxury because I'd burned through it.
Right.
You know, so I always kept myself positioned where I had to work, you know. So I see myself working forever, man. I love it. I love working.
It's like the thrill of the kill. There's something about you feel alive,
Mm-hmm.
like participating in something, whether it's critical thinking or helping someone else. It's like I don't think. I mean, for me, like I said, we're talking about the retirement aspect. It's like it's really not even a factor.
Yeah. See, and I wish Jamie and I don't have kids, you know, and she doesn't have, you know, we've been together for 16 years and I never wanted kids. I think she probably did at some point in time, but never really pushed the issue. And, you know, now when you're older, you sit there and think, well, I got this great company, but I have nobody to leave it to.
Mm.
You know, I've got a niece and I've got a nephew. And that's it. My niece definitely not getting it.
Right.
And my nephew, I'm like, you know, I'm still wondering, you know, what this kid's going to do. But I want him to do whatever. You know, I give him all the opportunities in the world to do and be whoever he wants to be. Not that my niece doesn't have that opportunity. She's just not a business person. Yeah. And he works for me now. So, but, you know, I don't think I could leave my company to him.
No.
You know, and I definitely couldn't leave it to Jamie. You know, she couldn't run it. So it's one of those deals. If something ever happened to me, you know, and those are things I've never thought about before either. What is the succession plan?
Uh-huh.
Not just, you know, what is retirement? What is succession from if something happens to me?
Yep.
How does the company either continue to exist or how do we dissolve it? Because it's too big. And it's got too many working parts and there's too many employees. You know, I've got almost 300 employees. And, you know, with that many people, I have a lot of lives that I'm responsible for. And so with that, you've got to constantly be thinking about, okay, how are we working this out? What's next? What does, you know, where I always looked at what's next month look like.
Mm-hmm.
Then I kind of was like, okay, what does next year look like? No, now I'm looking at what's 10 years from now look like.
That's weird. It's like we're maturing.
Don't say that. I'm not growing up yet.
It's like we're maturing. We're being proactive about some of these things.
Something I've never been. That's what.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Well, Andy, we'll definitely have to do a follow-up podcast because just a lot of interesting things. And again, it's you know, we're at that time in our lives where it's like, hey, anything goes. But we're also looking at what's the realistic timelines, right? Because Father Time will get you when he gets you, you know, and you want to live each day to your full. So,
and that's the main thing is go after it, live every day, and get out of it. That goes back to that me spending that moments with my dad. I want to make sure I get every one I can. Well, not just those moments. Now I want to get every moment I can. I don't know how many more summers I have. I don't know how many more Christmases I have. I don't know how many more birthdays I have. So I better make sure I take advantage of every day I've got to make sure I get the most out of it. And that's how I'm building my company now. You know, that's what I want, you know, and that's how I'm going to get it all, you know. Bible says I can have it all, so I'm going to go get it all.
Let's go.
That's right.
Let's get it all.
I mean.
Well, brother, again, thank you for coming on today. This has been amazing. And listen, hey, if you guys liked what you heard, I want you to smash that like button, subscribe, because we're bringing on people like this every single week, and I want to share their story. And as always, let's make it a great day.